Welcome to Insights for IT Negotiations, a podcast by UpperEdge, a leading IT sourcing, negotiation, and project execution advisory firm. I'm John Belden, UpperEdge's Chief Research and Strategy Officer.
And I'm Kylie Chisholm, UpperEdge's Marketing Manager. Join us every other week as we share insights to help you maximize the value of your key IT relationships. In each episode, we'll delve into the topics that matter most to IT decision makers and sourcing professionals. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Insights for IT Negotiations. I am joined today by John Belden, who is our Chief of Research and Strategy here at UpperEdge. John, how are you doing today?
I'm doing just fabulous today. It's raining here in Ohio.
Yeah, well, I'm in Boston, and it's about to rain in Boston, so same clouds overhead. I am also joined today by our Salesforce practice leader, Adam Mansfield, and that is because we are talking about Salesforce's Agentforce. When we're recording this, we are about a week out from when Salesforce's annual conference Dreamforce was held, and they announced Agentforce. So now Adam was boots on the ground in San Francisco, and he's going to give us the lowdown on exactly what Agentforce is, how they're marketing it, and what customers need to know. So Adam, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, awesome. Always look forward to it. Always like talking to both of you. So let's do it.
Well, Adam, just to get started, tell us about Dreamforce.
Oh, Dreamforce. Well, I will tell you that although there was less people than in the past, there was still a lot of people, and
A
there
small
was
city.
They do take over the city. A lot of people running around, a lot of good music throughout the day, DJs, all that. A lot of puppets. You got the Einstein running around. But in all seriousness, there was a lot of good conversations. I was able to have a lot of really good conversations with some of our clients while out there. Some people that for the first time talking to them, and there were some common themes, and that's ultimately what we're going to talk about, right? When you walk in on a keynote and you hear the word agents and Agentforce about 4 million times, post the keynote, there's naturally going to be a lot of conversation, and that's really why I'm here, like just trying to bring that to the forefront, because I think there's going to be a lot of questions. But I also know through experience, Salesforce is really good at taking questions and making them opportunities.
Yeah, so let's just start with this big question, right? What is Agentforce, right? It sounds like something on 007.
Yeah, it's a great question, especially when you think about Salesforce, because you always have to wonder, is this a branding exercise? Is this something fun that they're doing? So a couple things. Number one, think of this as, for lack of a better purpose, it's kind of the former Einstein Copilot, right? Now, the way they're saying it is Copilot enhanced, right? But what it really is it's, taking proactive, autonomous, out of the box, at least for now, agents that effectively they're like bots that allow customers, whether it's the sales organization, the service organization, or down the road, marketing and commerce, it allows them to shift their attention to other things while this is, operating from a priority of work perspective 24/7. It's going to hopefully resolve and automate a lot of activity. And the way to look at this is, and this is key, they were very careful in saying it's not going to replace your employees that work in the service department. It's not going to replace your sales. It's more to help augment the function to make them more productive, but also so you can have interactions with the base, your customers, internal, external, through these bots. It's built on AI capabilities. And the other thing I would just say, and I think this is really important, like at UpperEdge, we don't necessarily get into like what's the best product or what you should be using. We don't necessarily get into the technical, functional aspects of it. But I think this is very important for customers to think about. And when you're talking to Salesforce, I would ask them a simple question. Number one, what is it? And see what they come back with. But number two, tell them that you remember an acquisition that occurred back in October of last year. And tell them that you looked at that acquisition, which was AirKit AI, And when you look at it, it looks a lot like what they're saying this is. And the reason I bring that up is this is going to open an opportunity up for customers to really dig in on what they're actually doing. So how integrated is this actually? Like Salesforce has had problems integrating things in the past. Tableau, MuleSoft, Slack, at all. It's going to also open the conversation about is like, what proof points do you have? Are the proof points that you're putting on the screen AirKit AI, or are they actually your Agentforce? What is it? So I would really try to challenge your sales rep, challenge the individuals that are trying to push this product to talk granular, but also mention bought something in October of 2023, and here we are in 2024. What's happened in that period of time, and why should I believe that this is Salesforce's stood up thing that's going to give value moving forward?
Mm-hmm. Is that other products still existing?
Well, it's interesting. So if you go onto their website, you can still see it as like its own entity. What I will tell you from my understanding is that it's been effectively fully kind of baked in, and it's the technology behind the Agentforce, the agents, the bots that I was just referencing to.
Yeah, one possibility is they acquired the company and I'll say let the technology die, but then took the knowledge capital associated with the people that are actually, with that company and said, "Hey, we want you to do the same thing. We just want you to do it over here."
John, that's a great point. In fact, when I talk about drilling down on what is Agentforce, when you're talking to your sales rep or whoever it may be, I would ask him about that. So what people got carried over? Because you know as well as I do, in this space, the people behind it, the R&D in this world are maybe just as valuable as the thing they bought.
Yeah, just as an aside, we'll get back into the Agentforce. One of the terms that I'm hearing more often right now is something that's called acqui-hire, right? And what acqui-hire is companies going out and essentially acquiring, right, and hiring away all of the critical talent from a small company, right, and bringing it to their company, but still leaving the small company intact, right, to essentially die on the vine. And they do that in order to avoid SEC regulations and efforts on competitive. You can't buy this guy. They're just essentially bringing the talent over and saying we're going to leave the company there.
It's funny that you said that. I know I can see Kylie. She wants to keep moving us forward here, but which is good. But it's funny that you said that because I'm drawing a blank on the company he was at. But this is actually really interesting. The whole story about Brett Taylor, who's no longer now at Salesforce, who was the up-and-comer, became co-CEO. The whole story behind that was Benioff acquired Taylor's company really to get Taylor within Salesforce. So that's just there's a history there, perhaps, that indicates what may have also been going on behind the scenes at this one.
So as we think about this Agentforce, right? This artificial intelligence kind of Einstein next generation, is it, to your knowledge, does it work just with the Salesforce product, or does it work with the suite of products that now kind of come underneath the Salesforce umbrella?
Yeah. So it's a great question. So as far as I can understand, there's a couple pieces to this to unwrap. Number one, what I know is right now kind of going to be generally available in October, which I think it's actually going to be October 25th from the people I've been talking to. So it's end of October. They're going to focus kind of on sales and service, okay? But they already have marketing, commerce. They have other apps in which this is tethered to. Their pitch, especially at Dreamforce, is they have this overarching kind of shell, which is literally to show that the agents are going to be each piece of what Salesforce sells. And the whole idea is to springboard off of what Benioff said during the earnings call, which is, and I'm going to quote him here, the future is not about having a sales force or a service force or a marketing or a commerce. It's about having an agent force. So every layer that they sell is going to have that bot, for lack of a better term, that can layer on it that'll increase or be tethered to that product. The other thing I would say about you're talking about here is that I think it's going to take time, right? I think there's been some indicators, and the perfect one is this. There's something called Atlas reasoning. Atlas reasoning, think of it as the brains behind all of this that then drives what the bot does. The Atlas reasoning is going to be updated, but that next update doesn't happen until February of 2025. So if you think about what I'm talking, you got the agents for sales and service. General availability is end of October. But then it's going to be like another 4 to 5 months before the reasoning, Atlas reasoning, is going to get updated. So there's a lag there, right? So I think there's always going to be a lag. The other point that you bring up, and this is really critical, you asked about kind of how it tethers to other applications. This, to me, is one of the biggest gotchas, one of the biggest things that's about to happen for all these customers that are interested in agents. The whole pitch here is that it has low hallucinogen. Oh my goodness.
Low levels
God,
of
you want to help me with that one? Yes.
Low
great.
levels of hallucinations.
There it is. It's a supremely accurate AI. You see all these buzzwords. Part of the reason is the Atlas reasoning, which is proprietary that they said. Part of it has to do with the actual foundational AirKit AI thing we were just talking about. But this is the other piece, Data Cloud. So Data Cloud was something that they launched last year, and they've gotten some momentum on this. There's like 1,500 deals that closed in Q2, which was recently reported. It's a very important thing. Data Cloud is how it's trusted. So Data Cloud is the cell of all the data within your ecosystem across all the Salesforce applications. But then when you think about MuleSoft, which is an integration application that they bought, which tethers to SAP and all your other things, it funnels into the Data Cloud and then creates kind of the trusted layer that adds into what's getting spit out by the bot. Now, I'm speaking in very technical terms, I know, but that's what this is. Why do I say this? We'll talk pricing in a minute, but my understanding is that it's not just about agents. In order to get the full value, the ROI that you C-suite people want, you have to also have Data Cloud. And Data Cloud is going to cost you extra, right? So it's a value proposition of, it makes sense, I want all my data to be harmonious, and that's going to drive the value. But don't just talk to me about agents. I got to understand Data Cloud as well.
Did you know that UpperEdge offers subscription advisory services? This on-demand solution provides essential benchmarks and market insights specific to your business needs precisely when you need it, empowering you and your team to make informed decisions for your IT initiatives. Position your team for success. Reach out today via the link in the show notes to learn more.
I have to understand the enabling infrastructure that is going to go with it, right? But as we think about the pricing, and maybe school us a little bit on how you think this is going to be priced. I mean, one of the things that I'm hearing more and more is that companies at least are thinking about pricing based upon conversation, right? So I had a conversation with the bot, and therefore there's a price associated with it, and they're doing that in order to be able to mitigate the risk associated with not selling as many licenses anymore, because there isn't going to be as many licenses in the company because it's going to require less people, right? So, maybe, talk to us about, kind of what's going on in that space.
Yeah, it's a lot of things there. So number one, what you're talking about is spot on. Okay, so that in our world, in Salesforce world, or just software as a service world, it's instead of like by seat, it's consumption based. For me, anything that becomes consumption based, I think of one word: flywheel. So if you are a publicly traded company and you want to get your investors excited, you want to show them that you have something that once it starts, it doesn't just spin, it spins very, very fast. And so that is the model that they want to push as many as they possibly can. That is how this is going to be. From all indications, this is how it's going to be, which is you have to have a per user subscription. I'm using the Sales and Service Cloud, just the foundational components. Then what happens is that there's going to be the agent, And the way in which the pricing for the agent, it's going to be based on number of conversations that are being effectively, worked through the bot. Now, the problem's going to be, it's just like with Commerce Cloud where they have a GMV, and once you get over your GMV, gross merchandise value, you owe them more money. Here's the thing. Just like in the GMV, gross merchant value, if this bot is pumping out a lot of conversations that are beneficial to the services organization, beneficial to the sales organization, in other words, it's bringing value, that spinning wheel needs to keep spinning. So all it's going to mean is more money for Salesforce. You don't need to hire more people to drive up revenue, seat count. It's just spin. That is the problem with all deals consumption-based. And here's the thing. And just to get to this is the kind of the biggest thing, my takeaway on this. During the earnings call pre-Dreamforce, I believe that Benioff messed up. I believe he somewhat let the cat out of the bag before he should have. And he was probably doing it because his audience are investors and he wanted to get them excited. But what I'm about to tell you has now been out there. You can dig around on their website and find this, and I have confirmation on this. The current estimated price per one conversation is $2.
That's what I was thinking. That's what I had heard as well.
So if you think, again, that's list price. Like obviously companies like us help you negotiate. You shouldn't pay $2. But the point is, that's what they're modeling out. Why does that become important? Expect these kind of PowerPoint presentations to land on your desk. If you're talking services, if the average salary or cost for a service agent is about $50,000 a year, that would mean at $2 per month, at $2 per conversation, that's about 25,000 conversations. So what they're going to do is they're going to come in and go, again, are they really augmenting the service agent, or are they presenting it in a form to replace? Now, that's a whole different conversation I don't necessarily want to get into, but the cost model is to counter what you're saying. If service agent goes away, seat count, don't worry, financial market. We have this flywheel, which probably will bring us in more money.
Right. And now I'm speculating, okay? So there is a conversation that's taking place, right? That conversation is actually utilizing other parts of the Salesforce infrastructure in order to be able to answer that question, right? When I'm enabling other parts of the Salesforce infrastructure, I may be ticking some of those other, I'll call it applications that are incurring metrics, right? Essentially costs. So part of what I'm doing, right, is not only answering the bell on the conversation, but effectively saying I'm building a really smart bot that knows how to use the rest of the application. And oh, by the way, when it knows how to use the rest of the application, it's going to create more revenue associated with the metrics of the other part of that application as well, right?
100%. And that's why it's, when you think about what I said about that kind of overarching shell around everything, and that's why when Benioff is saying things like, we're going to be Agentforce, not necessarily Salesforce anymore, that's why, because he wants every piece to be touching. The more pieces you have in the foundational applications, the more beneficial the revenue or the increase of the revenue tied to the agent is. And then going back to what I said, data cloud. Then you have the data cloud component that's going to be needed in order to get all the, data value, if you will. And then not to mention, you're not a MuleSoft customer yet? Well, you should be a MuleSoft because that's going to allow the integration to extract into. So it's the vision's there, and I get it. It's also important to think about it this way. They need to say something like this. Now, whether or not it does what it says it's going to do, we'll see. But from my perspective, when you have single-digit revenue growth, 8% as a company, they have to make announcements like this. The market needs to see how you're going to get to that number you keep talking about in 2026. Like, how are you going to get there, Salesforce? Well, if this goes according to plan, it could happen pretty quickly.
So when we're thinking about Salesforce now, they're trying to gen it all up. I imagine the Salesforce sales guys are going to be contacting everybody that says, did you hear about this? Did you hear about this? You know, what's going to be the negotiation strategy? I mean,
Yeah.
how do you deal with that Salesforce now? That's kind of the sales team that's approaching you saying you need this, right? Where do I
Yeah.
get started?
So a couple things on that point. So here's what I know is going to happen so you can get ahead of it, okay? If it hasn't already. Number one, during the Dreamforce, Benioff was up there doing his thing, and there was a slide that came up. And they talked about Salesforce Foundation. And on it, it was free upgrades are coming. Everyone get excited, free upgrades. And they had each kind of piece of the puzzle. So marketing, commerce, right? And each piece had a new piece of functionality that it's coming. They also had in there agents and agent builders. So congratulations. If you're an Enterprise Plus edition or higher, so unlimited edition, right? If you're one of those customers, you're also going to get agents and agent builders. So the first thing you're going to hear from your sales rep is, hey, did you guys hear the news? You're an enterprise level customer, you're an unlimited, you get agents, you get agent builders. Let's go. Let's get testing it. Let's get using it. You look a little bit lower. It says for the first 1,000 conversations, for the first 1,000 leads, and you also get a sales coach. That's what's free, air quotes. Now, like we just talked about, everyone gets excited. Let's say it's great. How quickly do you think a big corporation is going to blow through 1,000? Probably pretty quickly. I would also argue, which is maybe a talk for another day, what is a conversation? Like, there's no metric, it's a good conversation. It's just a conversation. So you're going to blow 1,000 pretty quickly. And then how much does this cost?
Right.
How much do I owe you? Is it $2 per conversation? You better have that all buttoned up. So salespeople are going to talk about the free, challenge it. Number two, and this isn't necessarily a playbook we haven't seen before, but this is what's going to happen. Number one, at Dreamforce, I saw this. Benioff mentioned it. They had launch pads, which was, hey, you're all here at Dreamforce? Come on over. Let's get this thing running on your laptop or your mobile. Let's test this baby out. So they're going to get you to taste it. Next thing, look, I know normally when we talk proof of concepts, POCs, there's sometimes a dollar amount tied to that. Here's what I've done for you. I grease some wheels. You're going to get to do a POC of this for free. Wow, free. Again, free isn't usually free. The other thing they're going to do, and they've already done this, you want your employees to know how to use this, right? Well, anything on AI training, instructor-led, or Trailhead, like online, free until I think mid-year next year. So they're going to put these things out there. What else are they going to do? Look, I know that when you do a move like this, there's costs to implement it, change management, all these things. I know there are. I'm going to give you funding to help you roll out the product. So in other words, they're going to come with all of these concessions and these great things. And by the way, this funding thing, from what I've been hearing, is that Benioff is going to put aside $50 million for the sales organization to draw down on to put towards implementations, whether it's Salesforce professional services or partner ecosystems. That's a pretty big chunk of change. So that's what they're going to do. They're also going to try to get you, obviously, access, right? If you can't adopt it yet, they want to keep pushing for access. And when you talk strategies, it's not just getting commitments on what's a conversation, in other words, the definitions. What happens after I spin through my free bucket? How much is it going to cost? What happens if I clip a certain volume? Should I get a volume discount? Can I buy in credit packs? What does that mean? Shouldn't my underlying Sales Cloud or Service Cloud subscription price go down? Shouldn't that go down because you're adding in a cost that's supposed to optimize? So shouldn't that go down? These conversations, but the number one strategy is to make sure everyone in your company is unified on the message. Salesforce, You want me to start tasting your new thing? I have other things that I'm spending on that are basically lighting my money on fire. Before I taste, you need to make sure I'm optimized on the base set of products I already have. So until you do that, we're not tasting anything. Lastly, data cloud, and this is important, John, just to reinforce, when I talk strategy, if you are not having Salesforce, either whether you're adopting it yet or not, because trust me, you're eventually going to have to. If you are not negotiating the data cloud component, what it will cost, what it looks like, how those metrics run, and you don't have that solidified, you're also setting yourself up for loss downstream.
Yeah, I think those are all great points, Adam, and I would offer this up as a thought for you to consider, right? My assumption as a client of Salesforce would be that Salesforce is utilizing, right, these agent forces internally, right? I mean,
100%.
most of these guys all refer to themselves as client one, right? We use it internally. And I would be pressuring them to say two things, right? One, show me within the Salesforce organization, where has this been beneficial, right? In servicing the clients themselves, whether it's customer service or not. And B, right? How have you actually been able to pass through those efficiencies to me, your client, right? Because I would expect to see some level of efficiency as a result of your implementation. So where's the money for that?
I love it. I love that because it actually brings me to a point that I just thought of. I've been to Dreamforce a lot, and when I was on the keynote opening presentation, I was sitting there. Usually, they get flooded with customer success stories. Flooded. There was basically one. All they put up there was Saks, and that's it. Now they had Open Table and Wiley throughout the thing, but there was a few. So I would be pressure testing exactly what you're saying. I need to talk to someone about how this is going to be beneficial to me. How is it beneficial to you? Killing two birds with one stone. To your point, I also know what benefits are you passing back to me? Because why is my underlying subscriptions going up 15%? That makes no sense. It should be the opposite. And you know more than I do on this subject matter, but I think about things like, and I had a client actually say this to me. So they have a BPO relationship with a large firm, right? And it was for help desk. Basically, their service desk is outsourced. So my thing was like, I would think that these contracts customers have in place with those, maybe there's going to be some friction created there in that ecosystem too. So I would just be, if you're a customer of XYZ firm and they're a Salesforce customer and they're using these bots, you might want to also reach out to that group and be like, how is that being passed on to me? If you can connect those dots.
Right. It's one of the things that that we tried to coin a term, and are coining the term is called indirect benefits of generative AI. How do you actually pull through the savings of generative AI through your supply base to you? And it doesn't cost you anything to implement generative AI because you're taking advantage of your suppliers implementing generative AI and saying, I want to pull that through. Right.
That's exactly it. And this is just another example. Because I don't know, but I'm willing to bet most have Salesforce or are going to be exploring this base because they have to, because they also need to have a deal with Salesforce to be ready to do those rollouts, right? The partner ecosystem. So I'm confident of that for 100%. And then another thing, just real quick on that point, because it's important. I see these things and I was sitting there like, 90% of our customer things were resolved on 20. Like, that's great. I mean, anyone in this field has seen these slides, like 90% success rates. That's great. I would be challenging Salesforce to say, okay, well, let me get this straight. You're going to learn on my dime for a lot of respects. Let's all be honest about that. Number two, it's going to potentially get expensive. Number three, how are you passing it back to me? But number four, what happens if those metrics aren't met? What are you going to do? Like, do I get a credit?
Right.
Like, how does that work? And then this also brings me even granular. What is a conversation? How is a conversation successful? What is that SLA?
Right.
Like, what is it? It's not just uptime. That doesn't work anymore. So I would be pressure testing those numbers, putting them back in front of them saying, that looks great. What are you going to tell me mine's going to be? And what if it isn't?
Yeah, and I would say, for those that are listening to the podcast, we'd love to hear from you, specifically on their experiences and what they've been able to achieve. So anybody that's got a success story in this area, I mean, feel free to reach out, stick it in the comments because we'd love to hear about it. Adam, I want to try to wrap it up here. I want to make sure that we're conscious of your time. Is there anything that you say, hey, if there's one thing that you should, a pitfall that we ought to say, be careful for, what would that be?
Yeah, I think it comes back to, and I'm glad you brought it because I think it's the best way to end this, right? Never trust free. So when a vendor comes out and says free, it's never free. Number two, the model that's proposed to this makes that even more worrisome, which is that consumption based. So before you start, okay, you've probably heard us and others say this. Before you jump in, make sure you have protections. All I can tell you right now is that in a lot of ways, the protection, the future is more important than the current day. Mm-hmm. It just might be because free or they're going to deep discount $2. And trust me, I was on that side of the house before. I know how pricing teams work. They put a ridiculous number out there and then they come in with a deep discount. That's all optics, okay? My problem is even if they got it to 25 cents, great. What happens when it rolls to 10,000 users, or conversations? You are so stuck. You are so vendor lock-in. You are not going to be able to come out of that in this round, this new AI world. If you do not have future understood, if you don't have commitments, you are setting yourself up for maybe one of the biggest failures that's going to ultimately happen in the market. Because this is not a scenario where you can necessarily easily move to something new. I know that Google's talking about agents. Oracle's talking about agents. The day before Dreamforce, Wave 2 of Copilot had agents in it for Microsoft, right? Xanadu release, Now Assist for ServiceNow. I get it. But once you start this, especially with all the applications in your ecosystem with Salesforce, it is going to be incredibly difficult to correct. So if you don't have a unified approach, if you don't have the right message, if you don't have the right deal, if you don't have all of that buttoned up before pen goes to paper, and I would argue before you go into a POC, before you start tasting something, if you don't have it buttoned up, you are not going to be in a good place. Look at it as, and I hate to use this analogy, but if you go and you taste that drug that the drug dealer gave you, and then you become addicted, go look at that in a real world example of how hard it is to become not addicted anymore.
Yeah. So Adam, let me give you a different analogy, right? If we think about these agents as the equivalent of employees or people, right? If you let one of them go, there's severance to pay, right?
That's a great point.
Right. There's a cost associated with releasing, and there's a cost associated with the new hire in order to be able to replace that agent. So, to that extent, they're almost like people. And you've got to deal with the consequences of hiring and firing.
And think of it this way. And I love that. And I'm not going to use that, John, if you let me. But the other thing I would tell you is think about this. The whole idea that, hey, don't worry about it. We're just augmenting your employees. Okay. So when Bob and Sally get augmented by a bot, meaning Bob and Sally require the bot to do what they're doing, the bot can't go away because Bob and Sally are not going to be Bob and Sally anymore. Like it's going to literally be tethered to the employee moving forward for them to be productive.
Yeah, that's true too. Exactly. Well, Kylie, wrap it up here because Adam and I could talk for a long time.
We could.
No, but this was a great conversation. And if our listeners want to dive even deeper into not only Agentforce, but also some other insights from Dreamforce and just general strategies for your Salesforce negotiations and strengthening your Salesforce relationship, we have a webinar coming up at the end of next month, October 30th, Proven Salesforce Negotiation Strategies for Maximizing Value. It is hosted by Adam Mansfield himself, as well as Eric Bullard, one of our advisory senior managers. So that will be packed with insights. Definitely head to upperedge.com to register for that. We'll have it linked in the show notes as well. But Adam, John, thank you so much for that conversation. I think Salesforce customers will find it really insightful.
Thank you for listening to Insights for IT Negotiations. This episode was hosted by John Belden and Kylie Chisholm and produced by Mike Brown. Be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss a new episode. For more information on IT sourcing and risk management strategies, visit UpperEdge.com and subscribe to our monthly UpperEdge newsletter. Thank you for listening.